Hey art friends, welcome back, and today's story is lesser known but about a very well known art figure. It's about Pablo Picasso and the time he was accused of stealing the Mona Lisa. And okay, spoiler, he didn't do it, but why were fingers pointed at him in the first place? Okay, so picture this. It's August 21st, 1911, in Paris. The Mona Lisa has been hanging at the Louvre for over 100 years at this point, and she's not yet the ultra famous icon that she is today. Like, people knew her, but she wasn't a global celebrity. And then she disappears. That Monday morning, a museum painter shows up to work, ready to sketch. He goes to the Salon Carré, where the Mona Lisa usually hangs, and the wall is just blank. And at first, everyone's like, okay, well, maybe she's off getting photographed or cleaned or, whatever the Mona Lisa does. But no, somebody literally unbolted her, slid her out of her protective case, and walked out of the Louvre in broad daylight. Now, this theft, it turned the Mona Lisa into the Mona Lisa, and crowds started lining up not to see her smile, but to gawk at the empty space, which in a way is like a work of performance art, where there's focus on the void instead of the thing. Newspapers worldwide blasted the story, but the French police, they had zero leads, and when you've lost the most famous painting in your country, you're probably getting pretty desperate. Enter a young Pablo Picasso. In August of 1911, when all this went down, Picasso was just 29 years old. He was living in Paris, trying to carve out his career, and he wasn't the household name that we'd later come to know. This was pre-Cubism, pre-Rich and Famous, pre-Picasso as a brand. He was just the Spanish artist living in Montmartre, running in bohemian circles with other writers, poets, and every other broke artist like himself. One of those friends was Guillaume Apollinaire, a poet, critic, and self-described anarchist. Very eccentric guy, very loud, very chaotic. And Apollinaire had a friend named Honoré Joseph Gary Pierret. Now, he is the chaos gremlin of this story. Pierret used to work at the Louvre as a secretary, which gave him easy access to the galleries. And apparently, he would just steal stuff. Like, literally, he would brag about slipping small Iberian sculptures under his coat and just strolling out the front door. Like, oh, hey, yeah, thanks for the free 2,000-year-old artifact. Goodbye. And then he'd go sell these off to his friends in Montmartre. And one of those friends was, you guessed it, Pablo Picasso. Around 1907, Pierret sold Picasso and Apollinaire at least 2 stolen Iberian sculptures. And Picasso, he was so fascinated by their stylized faces and sharp forms that he used them as direct inspiration when painting Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. If you look at the painting, the faces on the women on the left, they're very Iberian mask styled. So now, fast forward, the Mona Lisa is missing, the police are getting nowhere, and then someone tips them off. Hey, you know that poet, Apollinaire? Yeah, well, he hangs out with art themes. Maybe check him out. Police arrest Apollinaire. He panics, and he points at Picasso. And suddenly, Picasso is being hauled into questioning. Imagine being 29, struggling to get your art noticed. And the French government thinks that you're the international mastermind who stole the Mona Lisa. There's this dramatic moment in court where Picasso is confronted with the stolen Iberian statues that Pierret sold him, and he just breaks down. Like, literally cried in front of the magistrate, and he begs them to not ruin his life and insists that he had nothing to do with stealing the Mona Lisa. Which was true. Poor guy. Meanwhile, the real thief, he wasn't a poet, he wasn't an artist, he wasn't even some underground genius or an anarchist. He was a handyman named Vincenzo Peruggia, or Peruggia. Please correct me. And he'd actually worked at the Louvre, and he thought that the Mona Lisa belongs back in Italy. So, on that August morning, he slipped into the museum wearing a worker's smock, removed the painting, hid it under his clothes, and walked right out. Just like Pierret had done with those sculptures. Only, instead of the little statues, he had the Mona Lisa under his arm. Like, and I know that the Mona Lisa is not huge, but it would still be an awkward thing to pull off, right? Picasso and Apollinaire, though, they had no idea. They were just caught in the fallout. both were released without charges, but their reputations kind of took a hit. Imagine your name being forever tied to the biggest art heist in history, and you didn't even do it. The outrage! The Mona Lisa stayed missing for 2 years, and Peruggia kept it hidden in a trunk in his Paris apartment, out of all places. And finally, in 1913, he tried to sell it to an art dealer in Florence, and that's when he got caught, arrested, and the Mona Lisa was sent back to the Louvre. So it was all for nothing. And the painting, but it was for something, because she became a superstar. The theft made her even more famous than Da Vinci himself could have ever imagined. But Picasso never forgot the humiliation of being accused, and later in life he even avoided talking about it. It was a touchy subject. Because it's funny in hindsight, or just wild to think about, but in the time it was terrifying, probably traumatic, and he almost lost his career before it even began. And more importantly, he almost lost his personal freedom, just because of the messy company he kept in Montmartre. So no, Picasso didn't steal the Mona Lisa, but he did own some stolen Iberian sculptures, let's not forget about those. And that connection made him look very suspicious when the world's most famous painting disappeared. And that's the story of how Picasso almost went down in history as not just a revolutionary painter, but the guy who stole the Mona Lisa. So I guess moral of the story is watch out what kind of company you keep. If you're curious about Pablo Picasso's early days in Montmartre, I also have a video about him and his very brief relationship with opium. Thank you so much for watching, and if you're interested in these moments and stories from history, as I am, like, subscribe, and join my Patreon for more art-related content. And until next time, take care.